Hi, Dawn Summers here with Dawn Summers Fashion Studio. And today's tutorial is we're going to practice some stitching, and we are going to learn what the throat plate, what all of those numbers and lines mean, and we're going to practice. So today is all about having fun and practicing. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to make sure that our machine does not have any thread. So no thread and I'm going to use my Bernina, no bobbin, no thread of any kind, because we're just going to stitch. Then we're going to take paper, and here I have cardstock, but you can use regular paper as well. You can cut it in half if you want to, which might even be a little easier. But for now, I'm just going to take my paper, and I'm just going to draw a little bit on my paper, just like that. And then I'm going to take my second paper, and I'm going to do some lines and some turns for a corner. And we're going to stitch over those. So I'm going to start with my curves, and I'm going to line it up here in my paper on my machine. And I'm going to literally put my needle down where my line starts. Put my presser foot down, and we are just going to start stitching. So this will help you practice control, help you practice with the speed of your machine and following the curve. Like I said, you can use a half a piece of paper if you don't want to maneuver your paper around. So we are just going to get started here, and you go the speed that feels right to you, and we are just going to follow the line the best you can. There's a center notch, a little groove on my presser foot that helps me follow what I need to do. We're just going to play around here a little bit. If you need to stop and shift, you can stop and shift. And speed up a little bit. I'm going to slow down around my curve. Getting a little wide there, getting a little crazy. I'm going to slow down a little bit around this tighter curve. And I'm going to stop and roll my paper. I'm almost to the end. We're going to stop. My machine automatically pulls my needle up. And we're going to take it out, and now you can hold it up to the light and you can see how you did. It looks like I got a little wild there, but that can show you what you need to practice on. Looks like I need to practice coming around my curves a little bit, but this you can do with any sheet of paper. Like I said, a half sheet might be best to get started, and you can do these over and over and over again and use different shapes for practice. Next, for the ones with the lines in the corners, we're going to work on pivoting on our corners. So this is the second type that you need to do. I'm going to start my needle down on the line, and we are just going to stitch. So once again, I'm following the printed line down the groove down the center, and as I get to the corner, I'm going to slow it down, and I'm even going to wheel it by hand because I want to come right down in the corner as close as I can. There we go. You're going to leave your needle down, and you're going to lift your presser foot up and turn your paper and go down and follow your line again. That's a little bit. Get to the corner, we're going to wheel it to the corner again, needle down, so we can pivot, lift up our presser foot, rotate it, leaving the needle down, and following right on the line again. Pivot again, needle down, down. If you want straight lines, you can get a ruler out when you make the lines. I just do them really quick. Press your foot up, needle down, turn and press your foot back down. And then last turn, press your foot up, your needle's still down, turn and follow your line. And when I stop, my needle comes up, and there we go. So if you hold that up to the light, not too bad. So those are the kind of things that you can practice. You can make different lines, go over them over and over just to get consistency and get used to the presser foot so that you can control your stitch time and your speed. Now we're going to play with the Bernina, and we are going to look at the throat plate and what the different lines mean. So as you can see, there are lines that go all across the throat plate on both sides, and they have numbers. So if you look at the first number, it says 1/4, and that's 1/4 of an inch. So if you run your fabric along that line, your stitch is going to be 1/4 of an inch. If you move out and you know your eighths, the next line is 3/8 of an inch, and then your next line is 1/2 inch, and then the one that you can see there that has red on it is 5/8. So 5/8 is the seam allowance that all of the commercial patterns have, so I have it marked so that students in different ones can highlight it and find it very quickly. And as you go on out, the measurements just get bigger. So 5/8, this line is your 3/4, then your 7/8, and then my edge of my throat plate is 1 inch. So that is your guide when you're sewing. It's a nice long line, so you follow your fabric along that line and it creates a straight stitch. So that's the key, is you want to sew straight, and you need to practice to be able to sew straight. If you look at the other side, it's the same thing. So if you needed to sew from the other angle, the other side, you set it on those lines and just keep moving out as well. Another interesting thing is this particular presser foot, and not all presser foots are the same, but this one, if you lower your bar, you can see it almost lines up with that 1/4 of an inch. So as long as I'm in the center, which this one is stitching in the center, I can also follow the edge of my presser foot as a guide for the 1/4 of an inch. So what we're going to do next is to continue with our stitching, we're going to practice but on some real material this time. So you're going to need to thread your machine and put your bobbin in. So you can see I have some white thread here all set and ready to go. I'm going to put it towards the back, and we are going to start with a straight stitch. So I have my machine set on the straight stitch and my 2.5 stitch length that we have talked about, and I'm going to put my needle in, and we're going to, it's a little bit wide, I'm going to move it over to the 1/4 of an inch, and that will follow actually the edge of my presser foot as well. So I just want you to go slow, and I have just a 10-inch square folded in half, and I'm just going to stitch down and just concentrate on stitching straight. You don't pull the fabric, you're just guiding it. So just stitch, concentrating on the edge. We're just going to go all the way down. And I want you to practice backing up as well. So once you get close to the bottom, I want you to hit your backup bar that we learned about and back up a few stitches, and that locks it in. My machine automatically stops with the needle up, but if it doesn't, then you just turn your wheel, your balance wheel, to get your needle up. I'm going to lift up the presser foot, and we're going to take it off. I do have scissors, they're not super handy, but on the side is a cutter, and we're just going to cut that thread. Next, I'm going to put the fabric back, and this time I'm going to sew on my 1/2 inch line. So that will be, there should be a 1/4 of an inch between the two stitches, And I'm gonna just concentrate and follow this line. That's all I'm looking at. I'm not concentrating on anything else up there. I'm just following the line. So you're gonna get started, and if you wanna practice your back stitch again, just hit the button, we'll back stitch a couple, and then there you go. So just keep practicing and doing your stitches. You're following the line, trying to sew straight. If you need to sew slow like this, that's fine. I would go nutty, but you need to start where you're comfortable. We come to the end and we're gonna hit the back bar again just to back it up. And once again, we're gonna take off and cut the thread. It's kind of gathering a little bit. Now we're going to practice a little wider. So we're gonna put it on, and this time let's go up to, let's do the inch. Let's get clear over here on the edge. Now every machine will be different with their lines. The line could be drawn on there, but on this particular machine, it's the edge. And we are going to start our stitches. We're gonna back up a bit, and we're just gonna sew. And I'm concentrating on the line here, so I'm sewing straight, and then it's at an inch. I'm just guiding it with my finger. I'm not pulling or pushing it. And when you get to the end, we're gonna practice backing up again. And we're going to cut them. So there is your 1/4 of an inch, your 1/2 inch, and your inch. So that is practicing straight seams and where your seam allowance needs to be. So if I say that you need to sew at a 1/4 of an inch seam allowance, you're gonna find your 1/4 inch on your throat plate and stitch all your seams at a 1/4 of an inch. If a pattern says a 1/2 inch, you're gonna find the 1/2 inch line, you're gonna sew it at a 1/2 inch. If it calls for a 5/8 inch line, you're gonna sew it following the 5/8 guide, and just go the speed that you need to sew straight. Now that you have that down, we're gonna practice some other stitches. I'm gonna change my machine and I'm gonna do some zigzags, and I'm gonna put it on here, and we're just gonna play with some zigzags. So the whole idea of this part of the tutorial is just to play with the machine and get comfortable. So I'm going to sew at 2 for my stitch length, and it's set automatically at 3 for the width. So let's just see what it looks like. And always try to sew straight. I'm actually kind of looking at my difference here and following that. And we'll come to the end, and I'm just gonna cut my thread again, and we're gonna look at it. Okay, so this time, oh, I didn't get that one cut. This time we're gonna sew beside it, and I'm going to increase my stitch length so they'll be farther apart, just to look at it, because we're just playing, right? I'm gonna go up to 4, and I'm gonna make my stitch wider, and I'm gonna go maybe to 4, so it'll be wider and longer. And just let your machine do its thing. Don't try to hold it or push it or pull it. It knows what it needs to do. So you can see that one is longer and wider. So it's fun to just kind of play around with the different stitches, but those are your main stitches that you're going to need. So now, like I said, I just had a piece of material, a 10-inch square, I folded in half. You can use any kind of material that you want. I suggest using a contrasting thread so you can actually see what you're doing. You'll want to be able to turn it over and the back look just as good as the front. And if it's all bungled up or something is not acting right, that means it's either not threaded right or the bobbin is not in right, and you need to just take it out and redo it. That happens to me all the time, and I just like, what do I need to do? Just start over, take it all out. If you're having problems with material or thread bunching up and you've rethreaded it and everything is fine, sometimes you just need to change your needle. Sometimes they get dull and they won't go down through the material right and grab the thread. So those are some things to try. So now it's your turn to get your material and just play with all the different stitches you want and gain control of your machine, stitch straight, and be able to follow the line. If you are struggling following the line, in the past I've actually taken tape and I have come clear down my machine with tape so that you can like see as it's coming from the front where your line is. So concentrate on the line. You're not really concentrating on anything else of your stitching. So go get some material and go have fun, and until the next tutorial. See you later.